Well, hello again. It's Jason Renault with the Alternative Mobile Services Association, and today we're speaking with Rebecca Mironko of the Law Enforcement Action Partnership, and it's AMSA Talks. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Really glad you're able to spend a little time with us and show us this amazing map that you've created of the alternative response programs around the country. It's really a very useful map, and we're looking forward to a walkthrough of it. But before we get started, Rebecca, tell me a little bit about you and how you got started in this work.
Yeah, so I am the program associate on the community responder team at LEAP. I've been with LEAP for almost 2 years, just over a year and a half, and started on this mapping project. I started on the mapping project, I want to say about a year ago. And or we launched it almost a year ago. And I started a little bit before that. I didn't start at the beginning of the mapping project. Um, but yeah, I came to LEAP. I studied history in college and studied the history of social change and social movements, which is not directly involved in the work at LEAP, but was very interested in um, very broadly what I would describe as alternative justice models, which I think is connected to alternative response programs. And that brought me to LEAP, which is connected to my work on the map and the other projects that I work on the community responder team.
So your content follows leads to form rather than form leads to content. You were
Yeah,
interested in the subject.
yes.
Well, great. Let's just jump right into it then, okay?
Okay, so this is our nationwide map of community responder programs. I'll start by just defining community responder programs, talk about alternative response programs, community responder programs. So we define these as programs or teams that dispatch unarmed professionals to handle low risk 911 calls instead of police. And so, under that definition, we have 92 programs represented here. We have some at a glance numbers here, 92 programs in 31 states. And it's just, I think it actually is, maybe we're almost at 250,000 calls annually diverted from 911. Those are calls taken off of the plate of the police annually, and zero responder casualties under that, actually, over the course of all of the years we've tracked. That is, and I can get into some of the safety stats we have under that. This is the meat of the map we have here of all of our programs. If you hover over each one, you can see what the programs we have represented. And if you click on a specific one, you can see what information we have recorded. So we don't have all, necessarily the budget and everything for every single program, but what we do have is listed here if you click on each one, and you can click on the website and find out more about Denver Star. And you can see we do have call volumes for hopefully most of the programs. And it might not be this year's call volume, but the call volume year that it is listed for will be listed there. And then each of these, I can go through kind of the filters that we have, but you can see for each program, what kind of calls do they respond to? So you can see here for Denver Star, they respond to mental health calls, service connection calls, and we have a brief definition there. What kinds of responders are they sending out? So they have clinicians and an EMT or paramedic or nurse. That's a broad category we have. We generally define these based on educational requirements for the responders rather than their specific titles, just to make it a bit more simple for the map. The agency that operates the program, and then how they're dispatched. We have three different options I can get into when we go a little bit further down. And then the year it was launched, for example. And then you can also see these programs just
Ah,
listed here in the table view, which
aha.
makes it a little bit easier. So if you want to go into the filters here on the left, for example, and you want to see, so trained civilian, is only, it's like no advanced degree required, so
Right.
bachelor's or less. And you want to see only the programs that are trained civilian. If I go here to map, it shows 41, so the table is going to be kind of long, but these
Hmm.
are all the programs that are only trained civilian.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, so
Yeah, some of
that's,
my favorite programs in there, though. Some very good programs.
yeah, and I can go down to the section there, but I think LEAP generally recommends not having high educational requirements because you can, a lot of the calls don't necessarily require clinicians, the call types, depending on the program. And emphasizing lived experience maybe over having everyone be a licensed mental health clinician, um, depending on program, can be more advantageous. I'll show one more feature on the map. You can also search by program or by city or by state can be helpful. So for example, if I put in California and then you go to the table, you could just see all of the California programs. Is
Oh, I
helpful.
see.
A lot of those instead of zooming all the way in on the map. Um, or you can search for a specific program. So we have responder types, call categories. These are also broad buckets, not getting into specific call types. Dispatch method, whether it's an embedded clinician, 911, just dispatching the responders as they would dispatch police, or if the calls are forwarded to an external hotline, all the different agencies. And then you can kind of generally filter by city population, program budget, and call volume. And then this section, we just have some general resources that I think are helpful. You can download the map data directly if you want to make your own charts and do your own
Hmm.
um, kind of, yeah, look into your own insights that we don't have here. Glossary of the terms that we use here and some other frequently asked questions. If we're missing a program or have outdated or inaccurate information, we have a form linked here. And then generally, um, some resources that are not a compilation of resources from our partner organizations and allies that are very useful, and then a dispatch report that LEAP did and a liability report that gets into a little bit more nitty gritty about community responder programs. So here are some more overall information that's not necessarily about every single program, but I think is very useful in just looking at what is the purpose of this map, which is the landscape of community responder programs.
Mhm.
Um, I love this little animation that shows the kind of explosion of programs over the recent years and just showing that, these are new. It's kind of a newer phenomenon, but also tried and tested. Um, Safety information, something we don't have for every single program, but there is some very helpful statistics from a handful of programs. And again, showing that the proof of concept that, 98% of calls are handled entirely by community responders, only 2% are referred back to police, and there have been no serious injuries or fatalities. And these programs are operating very safely, um, with some more specific statistics here from a handful of programs across the country. This gets into a little bit kind of the combination of those responder types I was talking about. So, how many teams have an EMT, paramedic, or nurse with a trained civilian, a clinician with a trained civilian, peer support specialist with the clinician, etc. Maybe 3 out of the 4, stuff like that. And then these are just charts breaking down how many programs at all have a clinician, a trained civilian for each of those, and then the same for call categories. So the vast majority of programs do handle mental health calls, but that's not all that they handle. A lot are also handling service connection calls, substance use related calls, conflict resolution related calls, suspicious person, and a handful doing medical. And these are broad categories of calls, as I was saying, not specific call types, but we do hope to add a little bit more to that, as we keep expanding on the map. A breakdown of who's in what agency. It's about half contracted agencies.
Hmm.
and then half various city and county agencies. And then you can see the vast majority are 911 center led, but a few are embedded clinicians and external hotline. And then we haven't been recording it here, but I have heard of some programs having their own specific dispatchers as well, as opposed to just the police dispatcher.
Hmm.
And then we just have some highlights of the programs that were responding to the highest volume of calls compared to their population here. Yeah.
So
And
the
that's,
Antioch program is really up there at the top as far as call volume based on population size.
yeah.
And is that sort of the demarcation of a successful program at this point, the best signal statistic?
Yeah, I think for that's how we are measuring it is if we had access to the 911 data of every city, we might look at the proportion of 911 calls that they're responding to, but we don't. So what we can look at is their population and the number of 911 calls that they're responding to. And as I was mentioning before, of call categories or call types and responder types, they have trained clinicians that they emphasize training on the job over necessarily requiring them all to have master's degrees, which I think allows them to respond to a wider variety of calls. They do a lot of noise complaints, for example, which is going to give them a lot more 911 calls to respond to than narrowly focusing on mental health calls, for example, in their jurisdiction
Did you
here.
draw your data direct from the responding agency or from the 911 service center, or where did you draw your data from?
So mostly it's from the programs themselves. We meet with the programs, or if they have dashboards, we can get it from the dashboards or reports. Some programs will have monthly or quarterly reports. If there's no dashboards or reports, or maybe like a news article referencing the number of calls that they respond to. But again, we're looking specifically at 911 calls. Um, Mostly we're just meeting with the programs and asking how many calls they respond to, and it could be a quarterly or monthly number that we then multiply to get an
Mhm.
annual number. um, but yeah, usually straight from the program
So
themselves.
a lot of different sources of information. So when you click on one of those dots and you're looking at the
Mhm.
particular card for that agency, it may or may not be completely filled out. There may be.
Yeah, so some of them might not have a call volume. If you know the call volume, feel free to fill out the form and we can meet with the right person. And then some might have a older call volume. So I think I was looking at Denver Star and it's 2023. So um, I need to update that one, for example. Um, I'm trying to think of one I recently updated. And maybe I don't know off the top of my head, but yeah,
Give Candace a call. I'm sure she knows the number.
yeah.
Then are you starting to find more teams as you go along? Are you watching the media and seeing new teams emerge?
Yes. So when we launched, we had I think 80 something programs. And so there are programs we know that are about to launch and or that were not receiving 911 calls and now are. And so we'll
Mhm.
meet with those programs. And then as soon as they are receiving 911 calls or as soon as they've launched, we'll add them to the map.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, tell me a little bit about the history of this map itself. Is this the first iteration?
Yeah, so we've added programs and stuff, but this is pretty much the first iteration. I didn't come up with the idea, but I took it over to then launch it. But I think the idea was really that there was no kind of central database of how many programs even are there, where are they, um, how many calls are they responding to, what kinds of calls do they respond to. So taking on the initiative to make that map and also encourage programs to look around them, and maybe you can see we have these like white circles and yellow diamonds, and
Mhm.
maybe the white circles look around, they're like, how do I get to a yellow diamond call volume, to see that if this city is doing it, why can't I get to that level?
That's great information. And are you seeing that this is being picked up by researchers and policy people as well?
Yeah, I think as a base level of information, yes, doesn't get super into, as I was saying, we don't have the 911 call information of what proportion of 911 calls all of these cities are taking on. But as a base of information of where do these cities compare, there was we did a broadcast piece with the Evanston Care Program, and the map was referenced as, Evanston is on our bottom chart here, as I think they were maybe, oh yeah, here.
Mm-hmm.
They were like
Mm-hmm.
number 7 in terms of their call volume per capita in the country. So referencing that as like, where do they stack up to other programs? Um, yeah.
And where do you see this going in the near future? Do you have plans for this map?
Yeah, we definitely want to add more information to the call categories section, diving a bit deeper into what specific call types some programs, what are the most common call types programs are responding to, giving a bit of information to programs of maybe where to start with call types. Um, for example, saying, 50 programs handle this type of call type, and only a handful of programs handle this type of call type. So adding more information there, and maybe slowly but surely doing that to all of these sections that are a surface level of information, and diving a bit deeper into that. I would love to add updated information to all of the programs, and then adding more programs to the map, getting to our 100th program, getting triple digit programs on the map. I think it's definitely a priority to add more dots to the map, but also seeing the ones that are already there strengthen, and making sure that the dots can stay on the map and the programs keep going and responding to more calls.
Well, Rebecca, as a researcher and data nerd, you have had a somewhat unique perspective of alternative response from the 30,000-foot level, from a national perspective. Does this give you optimism to the future of alternative response?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned, between adding the more dots to the map, but also strengthening the ones that are there, I think both are important priorities when it comes to funding and supporting these programs. So I think I'm optimistic that when in 10 years you look at the map 2.0, 3.0, whatever version of the map that we're on, and you play that animation, hopefully that you'll see more dots play on that map, but also that you won't have had any disappear from where we are, and that we've continued to invest in the ones that are still there.
Well, thanks for talking with me, and I'm looking forward to iterations 2, 3, 4, and on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.